Hi, Catherine, Dr. Catherine Gilstein. Um, on my Get Wealthy With Me podcast today, we are lucky to have her because I was on her podcast a few weeks ago and it was so much fun. She is also a New Yorker like me, but I am going to have her tell us a little bit about herself. But before we do that, just want to make sure you guys know you are welcome to the next episode of the Get Wealthy With Me podcast with me, Sharon Parmeshwar. And our goal is to teach you financial education to bring you into the 21st century with financial education through storytelling. So today, you guys are going to hear a little bit more about my story. You're going to hear a little bit more about Catherine's story and what both of us are passionate about financial education. She is also a professor. So, but I'm not going to give away too much about her. So, we're going to have her introduce herself. Hey, lady.
Hi, so happy to be here. Thank you so much. I am Dr. Catherine Gilstein, and I spent uh, 20 years in banking, insurance, investments, annuities, and stuff like that. First job while I was in college was a bank teller. I think it's the best place to start if you want to get into finance because you get to learn everything. I've spent the last 10 years in academia, so teaching undergrad students. I currently run a graduate program for Chestnut Hill College, Masters in Organizational Leadership. So I teach mostly graduate students right now. Um, I have my book released in August of 24, and the name of the book is You're 18 Now What? And it's a new adult's guide to credit, insurance, investing, job searches, and other real world shit. So, just like you said, just passionate about financial literacy and making sure the next generation knows what they're supposed to know because it's not really taught in schools. I believe there's only 22 states in the country that have a financial literacy program in
True.
the high schools. So, between you and I, hopefully, we'll be able to grow that number. um, and get the word out there because it's just so important.
So, that's true. It is important. And even the 22 states, I'd like to touch on that a little bit, just go right into it. What I've noticed, because we just enacted that in Florida, where we are requiring a personal finance course for every college student every high school student, sorry, that is before they graduate high school. And I started digging a little bit more into this. And I have to keep reminding myself that not because we throw money at something, it's actually going to work. It's just enacting the idea is like the very minimum of what we can do. For example, I started researching what our state is doing in terms of junior achievement on what are they doing to implement the programs and stuff like that. And I'm finding out that they don't have staff to teach these kids, and so they will just throw it to whichever staff has, space in their day of if you have an extra course, and it could be a gym teacher, it could be, it could be a reading teacher, it could be any of these teachers, which may or may not have their finances, know enough about their own finances. Because they could be like right now in high school, kids are graduated from high school. There's a lot of millennials that are teachers that don't understand their own finances. So I'm finding I'm getting a lot of political answers. And I don't mean political Democrat or Republican. I mean politically correct answers. We're spending this much money on this. We're implementing this. We're implementing that. But then
But
one
to your point, execution, right? How are
execution.
we executing it to make sure that it's going to be taught and going to be going forward?
Right. So what are your thoughts on how we should be teaching? How are your students learning? Like learning in general, much less learning finance. I think it's not the traditional way. It's not mom and dad's learning methods anymore, if we want to say it like that. So I'm curious to find out what you're finding with your students, and kind of like how are we teaching them today as opposed to pre-COVID or 2 decades ago.
I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way. I think getting the message across is important and how that's done is going to be different depending on the person that is delivering that message. But whoever is delivering the message, what needs to be understood is that students learn differently. So some students are auditory learners, some students are hands-on learners, some students are video learners, some students, can sit and read and understand something with no issue. Other students need to be physically taught. Um, I know for myself, I started teaching economics. That was my main bread and butter when I first got into academia. So I was teaching microeconomics, macroeconomics, and especially in macro, when you talk about the GDP and you talk about money, different aspects of money, I would always ask my students, and I'd put up, a thing on the board. I'd put up a check, and I'd say, okay, well, what goes on the check? And nobody writes checks anymore.
Right.
However, what happens when you receive a check? Do you know it's a good check? Do you know it's not a fraudulent check you're getting in the mail? So basics like that. And I literally go around the room like, what goes on the check? What goes here? What goes there? And it's amazing to see that they don't know
Yeah.
because it's just not taught. What I do find, and I'm in the Northeast still, what I do find is that people are very good at saving for short term. So if we say, hey, Sharon, you and I, we're going to do a girls' weekend in April, you'd be like, okay, great. I'm going to put away a couple of $100. I'll be able to go in April. You have it set, you're done, and you're good. And people are very good at saving short term like that. When it comes to the long term savings, I think that's where the disconnect comes. And what I try to instill to my own children and to my students is that when you are working in high school and working in college and you still live at home, that's the only time that you could save half of your paycheck. It's
Right.
the only time in your life that you could do that.
Take advantage.
And exactly, and that's totally manageable. So when my kids were working at, 15, 16, 14, whatever the case was, I would take half their paycheck. And I'd take half and put it away, and I'd give them half. Spend it however you want. You want to buy a pair of $100 jeans? Buy $100 pair of jeans. Not a problem. Don't skip on what you want, but make sure you pay yourself first.
Right.
And I think if you get into that habit at that young age of 14, 15, 16, 17, where you're putting away half of your check, then once you move out and you're on your own, it's very easy to take 10% and put it away.
Right.
It's very simple. So I still do that to this day. As soon as, I have everything coming out of my check, for medical, for insurance, for, 401k, for down the line, my match, whatever that case may be. But when I get my net number, I write a check to myself for 10%, and that goes into a separate savings account. So I'm still putting away that 10% every check. Doesn't make a difference what it is. Um, and I think it's just building that money habit. And I think people, um, money is very important. It it's not a resource. So we have resources: land, labor, capital, entrepreneurial ability. Those are our resources. Money in and of itself is not a resource, but money allows you to purchase the resources that you want.
It's a tool.
So it's absolutely a tool. And I think, um, as important as money is, people don't really like to talk about money.
Yeah.
And if we don't talk about money with our children and explain to them, no, it's not their job to pay the bills, and it's not their job to know about, how much you pay for whatever, but they need to know something in regards to finances to see what they get. And I mean, we do that as young as taking, a 6-year-old child to the store.
Yeah.
Do you want 2 books or do you want 1 bunny? That's the
Right.
choice you're getting.
Yes.
So this is what we have. So I think if we continue to have those conversations and say, what are we doing? Okay, so you got this lump sum of money. That's great. What are we doing with it? Pay yourself first and then pay what you need.
So I want to focus on the pay yourself first thought, okay? Because I think a lot of people, and within what I've been doing and talking and learning from different, getting myself around, is people don't understand. They think pay themselves first means pay themselves first with a pair of shoes. They don't understand that pay themselves first means that you take that set of money and pay it into your future. You know,
Your future self,
yes.
absolutely.
So,
Yes.
so I think we need
Needs,
to
wants, future self. Yes.
yes, I think we need to clarify that playing yourself first is paying your future self. Your future self needs to see the benefit. The second thing I want to tap into on what you said is opportunity cost, right? So if you decide to spend $500 on a pair of shoes today, that's $500 less you have to go on that girls' weekend. I'm gonna hit you up on that, by the way, um, on that girls' weekend, but it's gonna be somewhere warm, okay?
Somewhere warm, yes. Somewhere warm. Yeah, even just drinks. Drinks will be good.
Drinks, yeah. Um, you're paying yourself first. Is if you buy that $500 pair of shoes now, because that's a want that you have, um, and even if it is a need, you still need to understand when you make that decision here, you're taking away that $500 from something else that
Right.
you
And that,
want.
that's the entire concept of opportunity cost.
Yes,
What am I giving up now in order to sacrifice later? So, you know, and I talk about it in the book, and a lot of people use it. It's the 50-30-20 rule. It's 50% on needs,
yeah,
30% on wants, and 20% on future self.
yes,
So if you need shoes, that's great. But do you need a $500 pair of shoes? Maybe you could find a pair for 125. If you
right,
find one for 125, well, that's the difference there. So I think it's just a matter of explaining that and just constant reiteration. What I do find up here in the Northeast is that students are usually given a finance course eighth or ninth grade. And, in this course, it's just a basic, pick a job, pick a salary, this is what you do. And then after that, it's gone. And then no one talks about it again.
I'm talking about
So, right. And I think that's where the disconnect is that we're not constantly doing it. We're not constantly reiterating it. We're not constantly importing it. And what I found, and the reason I wrote my book, was I was teaching these economics courses and business courses, operations management, marketing research, intro to business, all these different courses. And all of the students had the same thing. I want to invest money. I'm like, that's great. You want to invest money, but right now you don't know the difference between a credit card and a debit card.
right,
So we need to start there. So that
right.
was the whole premise of, the idea for my book, which was 10 years ago. And I was thinking to myself, I really need to finish my book. I had an opportunity to meet Ellen Hildebrand, who's a great author who's written 20 something books. I think 26 or 27. I just got her last book for Christmas, the last one she wrote. And I had an opportunity to meet her. And once I met her, it just clicked in my head that I need to finish this book. I need to find a publisher. I need to get it out there, and I need to put it together. And there are so many books on investing out there, but there's no books on basics.
Right,
So, my book is not the be all end all, but it explains that 50-30-20 rule. It explains the rule of 72. How do you know when your money's going to double based on what interest rate you're getting? It explains your credit score. It explains basic debt. It explains good debt, bad debt. The difference between leasing and buying a car, how to network, how to get scholarships for school.
right.
Um,
Which are
and
all
I
important life skills, that in
Exactly,
any profession, it
exactly,
does not have to be a finance or a economics profession. In any profession, I mean, I can the leasing and buying a car, the house, the understanding that credit is different from debt. I mean, those are just basic life skills that you need to survive, just like us understanding that are not taught anywhere, that most of our society do not know. Not just the Gen Zs that you're 18 now what. I mean, I think you can have you're 80 now what, and some people do not understand that. So I think that and that's where, like, I feel like there's this misconnection between reality and us, like, putting up this wall there that says, okay, we don't need to, yes, we're bad with money. So what would you say to some kid that says, oh, well, I mean, I'm just bad with money? What would you say to them?
Thirsty Thursdays. You find money for Thirsty Thursday, and Thirsty Thursdays were around when you and I were in college. They're still around. Um, you find money for Thirsty Thursdays, put $5 away a week. $5. That's all it is.
I
As
mean,
little and as little as you think that $5 is a week, if you do that on a consistent basis, and that's the whole thing, it's consistency. So,
consistent.
and on my podcast, I share this as well, is that you can't eat healthy for 1 or 2 days
Right.
and you're living a healthy lifestyle. You can't go to the gym 1 or 2 days and you're going to be in shape. It's not going to happen. It's
Yeah.
that constant, that consistency every single day. Are you going to slip up every once in a while?
Sure.
Absolutely. You'll slip up with your food. You'll slip up with your exercise routine. You'll slip up with your money habits. You might miss a week where you didn't put that $5 away, but that next week you get in there and you put that $5 away. And what I try to explain to the younger generation is that it's time and compounding interest that are on your side because you're
And the
putting the
power
five
of
dollars
that.
away. Exactly. So you're putting the $5 away, but at the end of the month, you're not going to have $5. You're going to have $5.05.
Right.
And then you're going to put another $5 away. And now you're going to have $10.10. And then it's just going to just keep adding up, adding up. And for me, it became a game. Like once I started saving and I was at like $85 in my account, I was like, oh, I got to get that to 100,
Right.
And then once I got it to 100, I was like, oh, I got to get it to 500. Once I got it to 500, then it was a game to get it to 1,000 and then to 15. So for myself, it was a game. I was like, okay, I could do this. I could do this. I could put this away. And it's just, like I said, it's just the consistency, the over and over, doing the same thing. It's the same with any habit, and it's that mindfulness that you and I spoke about earlier.
Yeah.
Um, having that mindset that I can do this. Just because my parents weren't able to do this doesn't mean that I can. We're not in a society where we're working for 30 years for the same company and we're getting a pension. That's not happening.
That's not happening.
So how are we supporting ourselves if Social Security is not there when we get there? So that can't be the only thing we rely on.
So I go back to that. So I've talked a lot about retirement and how is it different for the boomers that are retiring now as opposed to the Gen Zs and millennials that will retire later. Is there's something called defined benefit, right? So the boomers that are retiring now, their companies would save for them without them even knowing. So because they had defined benefit, so they would have a pension plan, and it would be okay. The company's putting away whatever amount for their pension, even for their health insurance. The company would be putting that away. We don't have we have defined contribution. What does that mean? That means that you have to contribute in order for you to be able to save for retirement. The company will contribute, but you have to have skin in the game. So for the most part, I don't even think there's defined benefit anymore, so much because I haven't really seen it. Where that the boomers have that safety net, we have no safety net unless we're making it ourselves, and that's why we need to be more financially educated on understanding what it is that we need to do for our future. The other thing I wanted to touch on what you said is that I always talk about my money journey as a whereas in some financial literacy or financial education gurus they talk about the mechanics of it. What do you do? I always break mine down into mindset, motivation, and mechanics. The mechanics to me is only maybe 30 to 40% of it, because if your mindset and your motivation is not there, like you said, the game,
Anything.
with the game, right? With the money game, to me, that's like your goal. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna make my goal $1,000, and I wanna hit that goal. I think if you're only doing the mechanics, it's like a binge diet. You're counting your calories. You don't know why. You want to get to this level, and then you go off the diet and you gain more weight than you were before because you don't understand what the mindset or the mechanics is behind it.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
So
So, like I said, mindset is everything. So you have to be ready to commit. And who are you making a commitment to? You're making a commitment to yourself.
Hmm.
So it's okay. And like I said, and Sally Krawcheck says it as well. Um, don't skimp on the latte that you want. Don't skimp on what you want, but know of that opportunity cost. Like, what are you giving up to get that? So you can, you want to go out with your friends, go out with your friends, but you don't need to go out 3 times a week.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
Moderation.
exactly. So it's just a matter of committing to yourself. Also, basics of, like you said, right now we have defined plans. So we have to put in order to get something. So if you're just starting out in your job and your company is offering a 3% match on a 401k, put in 3%, you get the 3% match. That's free money. It comes out before taxes, before you get your next pay. It's already there. It's already automatically saved. You can, so it's not something that you see, that you think about. You're never seeing it, just putting it away. Um, Take your tax refund at the end of the year and take that one lump sum and just put it into a Roth. Let it sit there and so you're 59 and a half. Just little things
Little
that are
thing.
going to add up over time. Exactly.
So I want to also go back to what you said about your sweat equity. So this is what I call it. So my first $5 is something that I sweat for, right? And the power of compounded interest is something I think if society understood a little bit more, it would be their motivation to to not want to work sweat equity for every dollar. I personally do not want to sweat for every dollar. So my first $5 that I put away is going to have to work for me. So that's the power of compounded interest. Understanding that when you put $5 away and you invest it even moderately on an S&P 500 or whatever it is, as long as it's invested at the rate of inflation or above, you're multiplying that. So it's now your sweat equity working for you, and you don't have to sweat for every dollar. So that's me personally. I or my husband or our household did not really make a lot of money in most of our lives. Like I worked part time during when my kids were growing up. So I left my corporate job and I opened my own little firm consulting because I wanted to spend more time with my kids. But the lifestyle I live, if people understood how much my sweat was, how much I was making there, they they would want to know how I did it. And the way I did it is understanding the power of compounded interest. Understanding if I take those dollars and I put it in the right places. And it was very little, but I just, put it in its own little pot. And then, hey, here's where you are, 20 something years later, because all those little pots grew and I was able to multiply and multiply without sweating. So all the kids that are listening to you and listening to me and saying, I want to invest, you have to first do the sweat and then take that sweat and invest it properly, move it into these buckets properly in order for them to understand the power of compounded interest. That's where you're going to make the money.
Absolutely. So it's different. Like you said, put them into different buckets. You shouldn't have all your eggs in one basket.
No.
So you have your 401k with your company, you contribute, they contribute, that's one bucket. Then you have your emergency savings. Your emergency savings shouldn't be money sitting in your checking account.
No.
It should be in a high yield savings account where you're getting at least, I think the rate's like 4.1
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
or whatever it is, but at least it's something. So at least you have that emergency pocket. Then once you have that, then you can take chunks of money, $500 here, $500 here, and like you said, invest it S&P 500 wherever you want into those little buckets where it can grow. Put it into a Roth IRA where you could take that out tax free later on. So then you have your Roth bucket, you have your traditional IRA bucket, your traditional 401k, 403b, or whatever it is. Um, and I think it's just because just the mindfulness is not there, is that people don't want to talk to their children about money. So the whole goal for my journey and my book and doing what I do and teaching students. And it was really great because this past summer, I received 4 text messages from 4 different students who are about 26, 27 right now that text me and said, "Hey, professor, just wanted to let you know my fiance and I just closed on our first house."
Aw, that's awesome.
Like they're buying their first house at 26 and 27 years
That's
old.
awesome.
Interest rates is 7%.
Yes.
So, 6.5, 7%. That's what the interest rates were over the summer. And these students of mine, are 3, 4, 5 years out of school and they're
Yep.
buying their first house. And I'm thinking, this is awesome. They listen to me. This is wonderful. But we need to get the word out there. And then that's another thing. Students don't listen to their parents. My kids didn't listen to me, but they'll listen to someone else.
Right.
So if you spoke to my kids, they'll listen to you. If
Right.
I speak to other children, they'll listen to me. If I speak to other young adults, they're going to listen to me.
Right.
So the premise for the book was to have that conversation for those students, but also have that conversation. And I was thinking of that single mom with a teenage kid, who's only 37, 38 years old, who doesn't know about money and doesn't know how to talk to their children about money. And what can they gain from my book? What knowledge can they gain so that they can help their kids? So I am getting that group of people listening to my podcast. I am also getting that 35 to 49-year-old person listening to me as
Parents,
well.
yeah.
And yeah, so like I said, if you and I can get, the parents of these children listening to us because they didn't have it. I know my mom didn't tell me about finances. It's
Right.
like your kid, like your job is not to pay the bills. You don't need to know any of that. It's not important, you know.
Yeah, I know.
So
It's more important now. Like for example, with my kids, when I'm from an immigrant background, so we did not know about investing in the financial markets. We understand investing in land, which is real estate. So that was the easier thing with a lot of immigrants. They come here and the first thing they want to do is buy their own house. So yeah, they understand land. Like land is a universal investment no matter where you are from in this world. But the financial markets have the connotation of being for the wealthy, and most immigrant backgrounds, unless you have finance in your background, then you're about the financial markets. That's not something that they did, and truth be told, 3, 4 decades ago, it was just for the wealthy. It was not accessible to how it is right today. So, I mean, so with the financial market during COVID, I mean, I started investing in the financial market during the .com era where I was trying myself while I was in school. And I didn't know enough about the market, and I did lose my pants. I mean, the better way, because I didn't know enough about the market. I was just going for momentum on what everybody's saying, and I got burned. And what I regret is that I didn't come back in the market fast enough. Yes, I did my SEP IRA, my 401k, and all those things. But I wish that I would have come back a little bit more into the market, do my research, understand what I was doing, and then, but I did. By 2017, I was coming back in the market, and then I had my 2 kids during COVID. The 2 kids was around, so my oldest had just worked, and I'm like, all right, put your money in your 401k, put your money in a Roth. What do you want to do with it? So then he's like, okay, we had nothing to do, so we started watching CNBC, researching the companies, and he did a self-directed Roth, and that's how he learned. And then my other kid is like, oh, I want to do that, mom. So I opened his own little account and let him practice there. Now, they don't manage all of their own money, but that's their little practice money. So Dr. Catherine and I are not telling you not to learn about investing, because I know a lot of you want to learn about investing,
absolutely.
but
But
practice on those
there's a
little
lot,
ones.
and to your point, you really need to do your own research. There
Research.
are
Yep.
so many things online that are false
False
information.
information.
There is no deposit $1,000 here and get rich. It does not work that way. Um, and that's what I hate to see is people getting scammed by things like that. So absolutely do your research, look up your stuff, see what you're comfortable investing in. If you're not comfortable investing, find a brokerage house that'll invest for you. I mean, you can open up an account with Fidelity. You can open up an account with Ellevest and just, speak to someone there and say, here, I have $1,000. I want to start investing. Where should I put it? I'm am young, so I could relatively be a little bit more risky with my money and have more in stocks than in bonds or whatever the case may be, and work with someone. Reach out to you, reach out to me, just get a start. And I think the earlier you start, the better.
And maybe if you do that, like I don't believe in investing my own money if you're not a financial person. Excuse me. But getting my kids started like that gave them a little bit of understanding of what the market is and their research. So now when they are working with people, because I definitely think that you need to have people work, have financial advisors work with you.
Of
Vet
course.
your financial advisors, make sure you're comfortable with them. Like Dr. Catherine says, there is a lot of noise out there. If it's too good to be true, then likely it is.
Absolutely.
So make sure that who you're listening to, who you're getting advice from, and what you're doing, you have vetted these people.
Absolutely. It is. But I think it's I think it's important. I think it's really great that the younger generation is interested in learning more. And if we can get the information out there, um, and try to help direct, I think that's important. But it's consistency over time, which is going to help you. What's the short term goal? What's the long term goal? And your goals are different. What you need at 25 is not what you need at 30 or 32. So, different stages of your life. So, it's not a blanket for everyone. You work with clients, I work with clients. I don't give the same information to all of my clients because they're all different.
They're all
They're all
different.
different stages in their life. They're all different situations. Some have children, some don't. Some are married, some aren't. Some own a house, some don't own a house. So there's all different scenarios. So it's definitely not a one size fits all.
Yep.
And any advisor that's going to tell you if you invest in this, you know, you're going to make a ton of money. No, it doesn't work like that. We cannot be the predictors of the market of what's going to happen. So
Yeah, and I mean, you have to understand there's something called your risk tolerance.
mhm,
There's your risk assessment. So you need to understand that's where the mindset comes in. You need to understand what yours is, and at different stages in life, we have different tolerance,
absolutely.
and we do that. Like Dr. Catherine says, one of the reasons that I am concentrating on this generation, the millennials and the Gen Zs, is because for me, between 15 and 35, you make a lot of your first financial decisions. You have
Absolutely.
your first bank account, your first credit card, your first student loan, your first house, your first child. You have so much that happens within these years that if you make good decisions, I'm not going to say correct decisions, I'm going to say good decisions, because the correct decisions is different for everyone.
Absolutely.
But if you learn enough within these, it'll help you into your future and it'll set you up for the different things. I'm gonna go into telling you about my priority scale. So we're women. If you haven't noticed, the hair will give us off.
The, the New York hair.
New York hair. If you haven't heard the New York accent yet, it's gonna come out. Um, we we don't like we are overachievers. Most women are overachievers by nature, and we don't like to take anything off of our list. We believe in that we can do it all, which we can. I mean, we are the better sex no matter what. But we need we can we
Absolutely.
have our priority list, right? So when when you're going through, I know it's confusing, and the kids out there might say, okay, where do I start? Where do I go? I have my list, and I make my list, and everything's on my list when it comes to finances. So let's say I'm in my 20s and I started my job and I'm working. Retirement savings is on my list. House savings is on my list. Vacation savings is on my list. Later on, I will have kids savings on my list. Um, Buying that pair of shoes is on my list. I talk about shoes a lot because I'm obsessed with them. So all these things are on my list, but there only can be one thing for each number. So you have to decide which one is number one and which one is number 20. We're not taking it off the list. We're just focusing more on what's number one as opposed to number 20. And one day, number 20 can move up to number one. So different stages in your life, the priorities are just different. It's all on the list, but the numbers move up and down depending on what stage you are at and what you decide to focus on.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
So I think that it's okay to have everything on your list. And I know sometimes we're like sitting there and like, okay, I want to do so much. What do I do first? Or what do I do? Whatever. Well, I'll tell you, soon as you start working, retirement savings should always be on your list. So
Oh, absolutely.
where it is a different story. That's going to be up to you. But should always be on your list. If you're saving $2,000 in it, or $2 or $200, it should always be there, and something should be going into that one. When you buy your first home,
When you talk about retirement, there's only two reasons you retire. One, you want to, or two, you have to. And if you have to, you want to make sure that that's going to be there for you.
that's going to be there. Yeah. And with retirement savings, it's just the there's always emergency things that happen, but you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm 20, why am I saving for retirement?" Now, you know, we talk about the power of compounded interest. That retirement savings will be invested and it goes into an account, whether it's your 401k or your 403b or your Roth. It's gonna multiply. That's where your sweat equity, your first $5 is going in there, and that's gonna become $5.10, or things like that. So that's where you're probably gonna see most of where your growth is when it comes to what you're saving. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. Catherine?
Hmm. Absolutely.
That that's where, when you're looking at it down the road. I'm like, oh, how did I get $200,000 in there? Like, I mean, I when I started when I started my own business, I didn't have a lot of money to save for retirement, and although retirement was still on my list, I still didn't have, like, okay, I needed to put something in there, but I had kids, I had a house to save for, I had this, I had that. I always something, but I still made the sacrifice and I put $200 a month, which was 2007, so that's 17 years ago, and I continued to do that in my SEP IRA, and now that account is $200,000. Even though I opened a separate account, I mean, that $200 a month, which is dinner one night,
Exactly.
is
Yeah.
$200,000 today. So if I said no, I don't have anything, and I'm not going to put that away, what would I have 17 years later?
Oh,
Nothing.
absolutely.
So
And like you said, it's just a matter of that consistency. So if it's not $200 a month, if it's $50 a month, if it's $1,000 a month, like whatever that number is for you, it's just consistency.
it's
Every single month, put it away every single month, and it's just going to grow. Time and compounding interest, cannot stress that enough.
cannot. Time and compounded interest. Again, I'm going to say it. Time and compounded interest is
Absolutely.
your friend, is something that will save you a lot of grief later. And it's where, if you take that opportunity, it is going to be a great reward for you in the future. Dr. Catherine, I loved having you on my podcast. I hope that you and I together and the rest of the world can put a megaphone on how important it is to educate our children financially and educate our world financially, and
Absolutely.
get them out
Thank you
there.
so much.
I loved having you. We are gonna have to have that drink.
Absolutely. most definitely. Yeah, we need to collaborate more and spread the word because we're both in the, you know, same field, doing the same thing for the same people. So I definitely look forward to future collaborations.
Our passion is, and I think I speak for both of us here. Our passion is to educate you guys on things that we have learned. And if you can learn these things too, your life will be a lot easier. It's about, for me, it's intentional money management. If you do something mindlessly, if you're doing things mindlessly, you're not thinking about them. Whatever you're doing, and like Dr. Catherine said, it's your choice. Everybody's choice is different, but you must be doing it intentionally. Don't do things and you don't know why you're doing it. Do it intentionally. Know why you're doing it. If you decide that you're going to spend $10 a day on coffee, do that intentionally. Know that if you're spending the $10 a day on coffee, then you might not be able to go on that girls' weekend because you're giving up the girls' weekend for the coffee. Everything costs. So,
I just swapped that out. I've been looking at an automatic touchscreen espresso machine for a long time, and they're expensive.
yeah,
They're expensive. I did get it on sale, and I finally bought it. But now I am not buying coffee anywhere else.
right,
I'm making it at home.
right.
So my initial investment, but I have it and I already got my return on investment on it. So that was good. If there's one thing I can add to this, Sharon, um, and I think both of us feel the same way on this, I think the misconception, and then a lot of times, especially when you and I first started out in our careers, you could only work with a financial advisor if you had money.
Yep,
Oh, I have $100,000. I have $200,000. I can find a financial investor. No, 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 no. We want to work with you in the beginning. We want to help you get set up. So don't feel as if, oh, I just started a job. I have no savings. I have no direction. That's when you need to reach out to you or I.
right,
That's when we can help you in the beginning to get you set up and get you started. You don't need to wait until you have 50,000, $100,000 saved to work with a person. You
right.
can work with someone now. And I think that's really important for the generation as well.
And that, I think, also the definition of financial advisors, right? So there
Mm-hmm.
are wealth managers that might not take you until you're $250,000.
Correct.
We're not gonna say that that does not exist. So those are wealth managers. There's
Mm-hmm.
differences between a financial advisor, a wealth advisor. So you need to understand. You have to look for someone that's gonna be more of a holistic view. Look at your finances
Absolutely.
more holistically, and those are the people that's gonna see the potential. Because Dr. Catherine and I know that the younger generation do not have a lot of money to start with, but we
Right.
see the potential of where you guys are going. So having a lot of money already is not something that is shiny for us, is where we see the potential in the generation that we have, that you guys are looking at, the Gen Zs and the millennials. You guys have your potential is in here and your potential is up here. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say that that is where we call it human capital
Mm-hmm.
in the world of economics. The
In the
human
world of
capital,
economics, yep.
and the human capital is a very large part of your wealth when you are younger, and the human capital does get smaller when you get older, where your actual money capital is bigger. But we are very intrigued with your human capital, because if we are able to help you with your human capital today, it will be able to grow in the future.
And that's another thing that I touch on, and it's the difference between saving now and saving for the future. The difference between debt now, debt in the future, and it's the difference between income now and wealth later. So
Yes,
those
absolutely.
are those are definitely the three differences that I touch on. If you can control your savings now, you can control it in your future. If you
Yeah,
can control your debt now, you can control it in your future. And if
absolutely.
you control your income now, you can build your wealth for later on. And that's the whole
If you
the
can
whole
manage a little
concept.
bit of money, you can manage a lot of money. If you can't manage a little bit of money, you can't manage a lot of money. That's how it goes.
Another thing I always tell my students is if money is your only problem, you have no issues at all. And and that's the truth. You take money out of the equation and think about the actual problems that you have.
Yes, absolutely.
Hmm. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Dr.
much.
Catherine. I look forward to us talking a little bit more later. Maybe when we meet for those drinks, we'll post some Instagram shorts on what we're doing there.
Oh, there you go.
There you
That'll
go.
be fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Get Wealthy with me. You will have all of Dr. Catherine's information in the bottom of our video and our podcast, and wherever you are listening to this or watching us, you will have all of her information if you need to get in contact with her. And also, you will also have a link to her podcast, which is You're 18 Now What, which is an awesome name, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.